Hello, welcome back. Glad you could join us. Continuing the series Building Your Dream House in Jamaica, we are on the topic of rebar. This is the second part of a three-part series on rebar, and today we are going to talk about rebar in belting. However, before we get into that, I would like to thank all my old subscribers and thank the new people who have joined us. You are growing this channel by leaps and bounds, as I've said before, and I'm rather thankful about that. We are getting there. The purpose of this channel is, of course, to inform and educate the people who would like to build a nice retirement home, perhaps, or even just a holiday home in Jamaica, but who think that building in Jamaica may be a little bit too expensive and out of reach. Is to get you to understand that it is not as expensive as you may think. It's not as out of reach as you may think. And in fact, given the right circumstances and under the right conditions, if you have the proper information, you can build in Jamaica very, very cost effectively. And this I aim to, stimulate the mind and get you to think a little bit outside the box when you are constructing your building. So please like, share, and hit that notification bell so you will be notified whenever I have new videos out. Okay, so let's define belting. Belting and bond beam are the same thing. The bond beam runs along the top of your building, along the top of your walls, and the purpose is to tie all the walls and corners together, hence the term belting. So then, of a necessity, your belting would have to be a beam that runs along the top of your wall and necessarily goes around the entirety of your building and the entirety of every room in that same building. So the way beltings and bond beams are constructed and designed in Jamaica, they usually form a load-bearing structural element. This load-bearing structural element generally takes the load off the walls and put them onto the columns in the corners of each room. And what we aim to provide you with is the understanding that this does not necessarily have to be so, especially if you're constructing a single-story building. And in fact, if you're constructing a single-story building, there's absolutely no necessity to have the bond beam being a load-bearing element all by itself and removing loads from the wall. In constructing the bond beam in a more integrated way into the walls and having the walls become also load-bearing elements, you then remove the necessity to have the bond beams and the columns be as robustly constructed as they generally are, and thereby reducing the cost of construction by a considerable amount. So generally speaking, the way you construct your bond beam or your belting is you first form your rebar cage. You then lay your rebar cage along the top of your wall. You then construct your boxing or your form around the rebar cage, and this is usually done with plywood, a lot of nails, and a lot of time and carpentry. And this is very, very expensive. There is a much easier way to do this if you are constructing a one-story building, and I will show you that way. Now, one way of reducing the cost of your building is to reduce the amount of skilled labor that is necessary to build the building. Another way of reducing the cost is to reduce the amount of concrete that you have to use to construct the building, while not compromising the strength of the building and its ability to resist hurricanes and earthquake, because those are the two natural elements that we have to build for. Now, we need to remember, of course, that concrete being strong in compression, there is only a necessity to ensure that if your building experiences shear forces, then the building needs to stand up to those shear forces. So with that in mind, let us consider these two separate methods of construction side by side. Both are achieving exactly the same goal. Now, if you are constructing a multi-story building, the one on the right is exactly the way to go. But if you're constructing a single-story building, there is absolutely no necessity to have that overbuilt beam inside of the building. And in fact, there is no necessity to have all that expensive forms and so on. The way to get around that is to use a bond block. It's very, very simple. It is a U-shaped block, the one that you see in the picture now. It is then used as the final course of blocks around the top of your building. Now, since it is U-shaped, as you can clearly see, it is designed to replace all your boxing and your forms and all that expensive stuff that you are going to use. Now, of course, the only con to it is that you have to make a mold and then drop your blocks beforehand. But the upside of this is that this is far cheaper and does not require any sort of skilled labor. Now, your belting cage is then constructed and placed inside of this U-shaped bond block, and you then use your high-strength concrete to form your beam or your. Also, because you're using less concrete, what you end up with is a lot less weight on top of your wall. Of course, because the space in which you are pouring your concrete and forming your bond beam or belting is going to be much smaller, you are going to require a higher grade of concrete. But the upside of that is that even though your mixture, your concrete mixture, is going to be of a much higher grade and therefore a bit more expensive, you are going to be using far less concrete, and therefore you will have reduced your cost in this area by a considerable amount. Now, as we said before, there are different ways of constructing your bond beam, and the type of bond beam that you will use will depend on the sort of roof that you are going to be using. If you are going to be using a conventional roof, then your bond beam can be constructed in the simple way that I've shown before, where you simply lay your steel, your half-inch steel, in the manner that I've shown, and pour your high-strength concrete into your bond beam, at which point you have formed a proper belting or a proper beam along the top of your building, and that is sufficient to carry your roof, and that's also sufficient to ensure the structural integrity of the walls and your corners, and in fact the entirety of your building. If, however, you are going to use a slab roof, then you are going to have to consider a more robust type of belting. That belting will involve having, as I said before, a rebar cage. However, this rebar cage does not have to involve the extreme amounts of steel, of rebar, that would have been necessary had you been putting a second story on top, because your slab is going to be much thinner, it is going to be lighter, and it is going to require a bit less reinforcement because it will not have to hold up that vast amount of weight. As a result, it will be less expensive to manufacture. Now, as to the matter of your lintels, normally you would construct your lintels in exactly the same manner as you would construct your belting. You can also construct your lintels using bond beams, which is a far better, far more cost-effective manner. So as you can see, using more modern technique, one can actually build very cost effectively, and one can save a lot of money if you were to use more modern building techniques. So you will save on the amount of rebar that you use in your building, you'll save on the amount of concrete that you use in your building, and since you are using essentially foolproof methods of construction, you will also save on skilled labor, because most of these techniques can be effectively used by unskilled labor, and that will save you a lot of money. So far we have done foundations, walls, concrete, and we are now on the second part of our rebar series, second of three, and the third part will be on rebar in your roof slab. Now, I have not decided yet whether or not I will simply just incorporate the rebar and roofing as a single video, but stay tuned for that, because there are also many ways in which you can save on cost. Also, there are other types of reinforcements that you can use in your concrete. So I think in the next video, the final in this three-part series on rebar in your concrete, we will talk about the other types of reinforcement, because rebar is essentially simply reinforcement. So we will talk about the other types of reinforcement that you can use in your concrete that will allow you to reduce cost as well. So thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me on this series, and do not forget to like and subscribe. As I said, when you subscribe, when you watch and subscribe and you give it a thumbs up, it helps the channel to grow, and we will be able to bring you more and better content as the series progress. So thank you very much, and thanks for considering building your retirement slash holiday slash dream house in Jamaica. You have a good day now, and as always, thanks for watching.